Okay. All right. Looks like I'm live here. Hopefully everything is working. Hello, hello. Let me see. I'm going to double check the sound if I can hear myself so that I'm not talking to myself here. And yeah, I see you're popping up. Can you let me know in the comments here that you can hear me? Let me know. Write me a comment if you can hear me well. Let's see. I'm gonna double check here. Okay. Right. And here I am.
All here.
Perfect. It's working. Good. Everything's working technically. So let's go. Let's start. So today, what I would love to talk to you after a long time of not streaming at all because I had so much to do. But that was very good for me because I've had so many great students, but I didn't have any time for streaming. And I'm so happy to finally carve the time to get back to it. I want to walk you through the 3 moves that will make your Norwegian very confident if you do them. All of these moves are a bit of a process. I'm going to explain about it and let you know how to go about this thing. And I will appreciate any questions that you have so that I can explain the things in more detail in the course of the live stream. That's always the best. Yeah. Hello, Ketki. Yes, I can hear you. Yes, I'm looking forward to you joining. Yes, definitely. Alrighty. So let me explain a bit about the structure of this live stream. I welcome questions at any time during the live stream. I will stop at times and have a look at what questions have gathered, and I'll explain anything that's in them if necessary. I will take breaks for this, and I will explain 3 big kind of things or issues, or let's call them principles in language learning. And from each of these, I will tell you what the move is. What is your move? What is it that you should do in practical terms so that you can learn to speak more confidently, and also so that you can feel better about it in the process, which is very important. As you will see, it's important for your well-being in the process as well as for your results. Yeah. So let's dive into it. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is the difference between learning and acquisition. Because typically we are speaking about learning Norwegian. That's the thing you see all over the place. Learn Norwegian and learn B2 Norwegian in 2 months, which is typically not possible, right? And things like that you hear around. It's always about learning. And nobody is like acquire Norwegian. I also don't use the term when I speak about my courses and about my coaching, because people are not used to hearing it. So people don't know what it is in terms of languages very often. But there's a very important distinction, even though, of course, this is a continuum, and learning and acquisition exist together in our processes. But learning, I define as I understand something and I remember it. Yeah. So I understand, I have understood what the teacher explained, and I remember, as in I can put it in a test, for example. I can fill out this exercise and so forth. But if you meet a Norwegian and they ask you something and you're like, I think I know how to respond to this, but it's not coming. Yeah, the typical frustration. I know it 2 days later, I know it 10 minutes later, but I do not know it on the spot. I cannot practically use it. That is the sign that you have learned something, like at school, like maths at school or anything else, but you haven't acquired it yet. And having acquired it, that basically means that it feels like your own. And if I wake you up at midnight, you will spit it out without thinking twice. Yeah. And we have some things that all of us have acquired at that level in Norwegian, such as vær så god, tusen takk, right? Takk for sist, maybe. All these phrases, the things typically we treat as phrases from the very beginning, and that we have heard so many times that I even go on a holiday to, say, Czechia, where I come from, and I want to thank the shop assistant in the shop, and I'm like, tusen takk, right? And they look at me weirdly because it's not appropriate there, because it's a different language, right? But it is so automated. It's so like my second skin. That is full acquisition of the thing, right? So there is a difference. And most courses and most endeavors, even on our part as language learners, push for learning only, without realizing that really we should be pushing for acquisition and not for just learning, because just learning, that can be a step on the way. But if I have just learned it, I can put it in the test, but I'm not writing a test. Sometimes you are writing a test, all right, but most of my students want to learn Norwegian and to learn it confidently because of their life, because of their work, not because of writing any test, right? So the learning that helps you pass a particular test, and especially a progress test, where you just put the vocabulary that you've learned in the lesson, that's not very useful for life or for work, is it? We need something else. We need something deeper and more natural, and that is acquisition. So I feel like this is the first mistake that happens oh so often in both language courses on the provider side, but also in the minds of language learners, that we feel that if I have learned it, meaning understood it and somehow remembered it, I'll be able to use it. But there's a huge gap between the two states. All right. So that's very, very important. Yeah. And why I speak about this when I was promising that I'll explain you how to be more confident with your Norwegian is because obviously the stuff we have acquired, that are the things that we are able to speak confidently, right? Some people reach the state where they are able to be confident even with the stuff that they know they're probably saying wrong, and they're like fishing for it, and the stuff that is just learned. And I have some limited ability to also use the stuff that is just learned in a conversation, but my ability to do that is of course limited, and if I'm under stress multitasking, it gets even more limited, obviously. So it is the stuff that we have fully acquired that I can actually use just like that with ease, and I can focus on my other thing, like, for example, the content of what I'm saying, right? So that's why acquisition is so important. And some people define acquisition as a fully unconscious or subconscious process. So that means picking up of things without consciously learning. Yeah, that it's a little disputed whether or not acquisition is only that, or whether it can emerge from learning and so on. The way I treat it for practical purposes, and also based on my long experience with learning languages and helping people learn languages, is that the two processes of learning and of kind of natural acquisition, they go hand in hand and support each other. And through particular ways of learning, we can create favorable conditions for acquisition to also happen. So I call this pushing for acquisition through learning. So we have a bit of a say in that as well. At the end of the day, acquisition is unconscious or subconscious. So when or how a particular item really gets acquired, we do not decide about. Yeah, but we can really create those conditions for acquisition to happen for us. Yeah. And another important point related to this is that all learning, every learning, not only languages, everything, but particularly languages, because there is so much to learn and you have to use it practically, right? Everything, every learning happens in your head and in your body, I should say. It happens in your system. So it's an inside job. And very often we like to rely on a teacher, on a textbook, on one particular course, right, to learn the language. But importantly, it always happens inside of us, and it depends on in which way we focus, how we take it in. So every learning and every acquisition is an inside job. A lot of the acquisition kind of happens to us, but because we expose ourselves to the favorable conditions in which it can happen. Yeah. So this is very important. You are the person who can learn anything. And I like to remind my students about this. I was just this morning shooting an introductory video for my beginner course that I'll be starting on Wednesday. Oh, and by the way, I have a QR code for this one here. So let me just show it for you on the screen. Can scan it if you want and have a look at the course. We still have a few spots. But what I wanted to say is I always try to teach this to my students and remind them about it, that I'm so happy you invested in a course with me. And I also want you to know that even though I love to go out of my depth and out of my way as a teacher and really like support you in all the ways possible for me, the actual learning, and let alone the acquisition, that happens on the inside of you. So you have a lot of responsibility for it and also a lot of power about this. Yeah, this is the very reason why the same course can be helpful for one person and awful for another and useless for a third. Yeah, so it really, really depends on this inside job. Yeah, always. So this was the first kind of area or principle that I wanted to make you acquainted with. Acquisition versus learning, two different things, even though interconnected, and it's a spectrum, isn't it? It's not like here is learning, here is acquisition. They are interconnected and all that. But stopping at having learned something is the very mistake that many people do, and then they blame it on themselves that they cannot recall it or whatever. Yeah. So that's very important to know. And the first move that's based on this understanding that you should make in order to make your Norwegian very confident ultimately, is to go and create those favorable conditions in which language acquisition and not only school-like learning can occur. All right? Because if you attend a quality course, or if you have a good guidance with a teacher, if they know what they should know about language learning and second language acquisition, they should help you, or they should model for you. They should kind of lead you towards creating those conditions. But also, like I was saying, ultimately, it's our own. It is our own power at the end of the day to do that for ourselves, and not only in class. Yeah, I do this for my students. I set up my courses in such a way that there is always, let's say, an opportunity for this. Yeah, or so that people are led through the different kinds of assignments that we have to really sit with it in this way. But whether or not somebody does it, or what you have on the inside when you're doing something, in which way you focus or not, what state of mind you are in, inside job, right? Inside job, very, very important. So create favorable conditions. How? I have two tips that I think are the most important ones. Number one, expose yourself to input, to comprehensible input. And we will get into input in the second area in just a minute. So I give it as a tip for favorable conditions for language acquisition to happen. But I also want to treat it separately as its own area because it's so important. So expose yourself to input massively, meaning Norwegian listening, Norwegian reading, not in the textbook. That is input as well, but it's typically boring, it's not relevant, right? You want the real deal. You want to expose yourself to the real deal as much as you can. Even if you're a beginner, in which case do scan the QR code and have a look at the beginner course that will starting next week. Because even as a beginner, if you approach authentic sources in a certain way, you can still use them, you can still benefit them. I teach this to my students in courses, how to do this. But you can also kind of try to use them and calm yourself down. That's the very basis of doing that. Yeah. But there are techniques for this, of course, so that you can use them successfully even at a very low level. And the second tip, how to make this move and how to create those favorable conditions for yourself in terms of language acquisition and not just learning, which isn't enough, is to practice spaced repetition, which is a learning principle that I also teach in my courses and that you can find a lot about on the internet as well. And spaced repetition basically means that rather than studying really hard and sweating blood, like we say in my first language, in that one session, and then believing that I will remember all this vocabulary, for example, people do this with vocabulary most often, for the rest of my life. And that's still thinking in terms of learning, right? But some people even imagine that they will have acquired the vocabulary after studying once because I studied very hard, right? So instead of doing this and believing that it's going to work, and then finding out that it's not working because it cannot work because it's the wrong strategy, but then we blame it on ourselves and we're like, I'm so stupid, I must be too old, I never had the language talent, and so forth, right? Because I didn't even remember this. So how can I learn Norwegian? And the downward spiral goes, right? So instead of doing this, we can realize that our brain considers important whatever that repeats often enough. Yeah, we need to get enough repetitions of something from different angles, in different contexts, in real life contexts, very importantly, not just in the textbook, which is kind of the same context all the time, right? If we see the item enough times, and enough times is not 3 times. Yeah, sometimes we are lucky and it's 3 times, but it's more like 35 times, right? Some items are hard cookies and it can be like 78 times before we even remember them properly, let alone acquire. Some items, we just get across them a few times in a TV series and we acquire them naturally. So we pick them up, as we say in lay terms, right? So it varies a lot, but typically it's like double digits of repetitions on every item. But the good news is we don't have to study hard any one single time, especially not with vocabulary. We can just revise it very casually and close the book and then do it again in 2 days' time. And of course, by exposing ourselves to that input, watching the TV series and what have you, we are getting in that spaced repetition, aren't we, as well? So we can be using vocabulary applications with our own words. We can be using Duolingo for all I know. We can be watching these TV series and reading some books at an appropriate level. And all this put together is creating favorable conditions for language acquisition. Yeah. So that's the first move. Go create favorable conditions for yourself. Don't believe that reading something once in a textbook is enough for you to be able to use it confidently. Yeah. All right. Now let's move on to the second area, comprehensible input. Sorry, just going to have a little drink here. I've been speaking the whole day, shooting videos for the course. So sorry about that. So comprehensive input. I was mentioning that consuming a lot of comprehensible input is essential for language acquisition. But what is it? Yeah. So comprehensible input basically means authentic Norwegian. It doesn't even have to be authentic to be input, but authentic is the best input because it's the real deal. It actually really looks like the thing you want to speak yourself. And comprehensible mean that you can kind of understand it, but you don't have to understand it completely. You can understand it a little bit. Let's say if it's 60% and above, then it's good because you already understand what's happening and you have what I call hooks that you can hang the other things on. So if you understand A and you understand C and B is in the middle and you're like, oh, given the stuff around, this must mean whatever. That's a very good place for you to be picking up new language and acquiring naturally. Yeah. So this is one part of it, that it's really favorable for picking up a vocabulary, but also, like I mentioned, for reinforcing vocabulary and for learning to understand and learning to calm down in the language. And people think that like 5 minutes a day is enough. It is not. It is very, very useful to have longer stretches at a time. Let's say half an hour. Yeah. 2, 3 episodes of a children's series in a row, for example, binging stuff. It's perfect. Because if you take a TV series that you like and you actually binge it, you will see a big difference. At the end, you will remember vocabulary and formulations from the series without even knowing how it happened. And that's acquisition happening for you. Yeah. Now, the theory that we learn language when we hear or read comprehensible input comes from Stephen Krishnan from the 70s. It's actually a cluster of 5 theories that hang to each other. And this is like one of the most prominent parts of it, that we should be getting input that he calls n+1, meaning like the ideal difficulty of the input would be the thing that you know +1. Yeah, just like a little bit above your level so that it can be ideal. Basically, never can we put our hands on ideal input, but we can get close. And there are ways of working with your mindset which enable you to work even with input that's more above your level. Yeah, it can be done. Yeah. So input. And also, the input should be what Krishnan calls compelling, which means very interesting to you. So it shouldn't be boring. It shouldn't be something you kind of hate. It shouldn't be something you resent. Yeah. So ideally, it's something you look forward to listening to. Yeah. That's the best input. And together with input, I also have to mention another part of Krishnan's theory, which is the affective filter, which you might have heard me talk about in the past. I used to do a lot of content about affective filter some months ago. And basically, affective filter, spelled with A, as in affect, yeah, it means that whenever we are in a state of negative affect, meaning if we are scared, if we are angry, if we have anxiety about something, if we feel embarrassed, if we feel super bored as well, if we have a strong sense of irrelevance with the content, which happens a lot in adult language courses from what I have heard around me. If we are in such a state of negative emotional affect, then our ability to learn and to acquire, especially to acquire, but also to learn, gets reduced, in extreme cases shut down, right? And of course, again, this is a spectrum, doesn't work exactly the same way for everybody, but on average, and you can think about this from your own experience, if you kind of hate the subject matter you're reading about in the textbook, if you kind of resent your teacher, or if you kind of resent the whole Norwegian learning business, or if you feel like you've been spoken down to in the process from the system and so on, which very many people experience or tell me about that they experienced, then you will have a bit of the effector filter up. And it is not favorable for language acquisition. And it makes you less able to use your input. So you can be listening to Norwegian TV series the whole day, but if the TV series is actually something you hate, or if you have this unresolved resentment within you towards actually learning Norwegian in the first place, yeah, this is kind of raising the filter up and is going to make it more difficult for you to take in on any input. Yeah. So we are talking about consuming Norwegian input and making the best out of it here, but it goes for, let's say, more traditional learning as well. Yeah. Your teacher is saying something and you're feeling resentment the whole time. You're not going to be able to take that in, actually. Yeah. So with the effective filter and the input, what is your move? The second move that I think is necessary for everybody to make in order to make your Norwegian very confident eventually is to calm yourself down and regulate your nervous system, like seriously, all right? So this doesn't sound like a piece of advice that you would expect a Norwegian teacher to give. This is more like self-development / life coaching advice in general. And obviously, regulating your nervous system is very useful in any endeavor in your life at all. In learning languages, it's very, very important to actually try and calm yourself down and check if you maybe are not dysregulated all the way through, or in some aspects. A lot of people get badly dysregulated with listening exercises, even though listening is the very thing that could make you learn so much in the course if your teacher uses listening, or if you have listening assignments. I typically assign listening as assignments from our platforms, but when I was teaching in-person classes in classrooms, I would spend a lot of time on listening and like coaching people on how to work with it. And I know that I was the exception, because typically there is not enough space. You have the curriculum, you have to run through it. Typically there isn't enough space, or not enough perceived space by the teacher to prioritize a lot of listening time. And then the listening starts playing and people get into a state of panic. And that means that they are hardly able to answer the questions in the exercise. But the questions in the exercise are actually not very important to me from a language learning standpoint. From a language learning standpoint, not from test taking standpoint, it is very important to be able to listen and tune in to the exercise in a calm, regulated state of mind, and to not be bothered about like if you understand everything or not. Yeah, I call this avoiding the listening exercise mindset. This is also something I teach in my courses, like for example in the beginner course that you can have a look at through the QR code on the screen. What we do is we go through all of these kind of the most key and the most essential aspects of language learning, and we talk about them in detail, or I have video lessons for my students about these, right? Because it's so important. We miss out so badly if we get stressed by these things. So back to the move. Calm yourself down, really work on it, whichever technique works for you. It can be mindfulness, can be breath techniques, can be grounding techniques, literally like your feet on the ground, sit on both cheeks of your butt, really like physical stuff. And also, to begin with, figure out if you are dysregulated. Sometimes very many people are. And then find ways of learning Norwegian that do not stress you out. This is very important. So many people feel like, okay, here is my textbook, here is my course, this is how I must do it. No, this is not how you must do it. There are so many ways to make an omelette. There are some non-negotiables in language learning, like having relevant input. You cannot learn anything if you don't have any input in that language, right? Or some sense of agency that we're going to speak about in just a minute. That's the third area. But apart from that, there are so many ways to make an omelette. So you do not have to do it through that one textbook that you hate. You do not have to put up with somebody that you do not like to work with, all right? So it's always up to you. And the best move for your Norwegian is going to be really to find ways that do not stress you out. And here I want to make a caveat. Of course, we need to step outside of our comfort zone. All right, if we want to learn anything, we need to challenge ourselves. We need to do that. If I want to start speaking up in meetings in Norwegian, I ultimately have to do it before I feel ready, because I will never feel ready. You know about this from other areas of your life. So stepping out of our comfort zone constantly and broadening that comfort zone, that is essential. But there is a difference, isn't there, between, this is out of my comfort zone, I'm getting a little hot in my face, but I'm going to pull through this. I'm gonna babble, I know that, but next time I'll do better. It's one thing. And between getting a full-blown panic attack and like not knowing what to do about it at all. Yeah, there is a difference. And I think all of us kind of know the line for ourselves. So we need to challenge ourselves. We have to do that. without exposing ourselves to something that is too much or that is unnecessary. Because if you, for example, have a teacher who you feel speaks down to you, and typically it's so well intentioned, but it cannot be explained to some people how some utterances kind of are perceived or can be perceived, you can just leave, you can just find a different course. That's it. Yeah, it's only the money in a way. All right. So a lot of things are unnecessary to expose yourself to, and you have the power to change them. Or if you don't like the textbook, but you know you need to do your reading, go find a book. Just go to the library, talk to the librarian. They're really happy to help, and they will help you find, for example, something for young teenagers that already has a story that will kind of satisfy you a little bit. But the plot is simple. The vocabulary is much more simple than descriptive passages in adult literature, right? Do not read Henrik Ibsen, right? And do not read Naive Super, for God's sake. It's a great book, but not for level B1. It's a very difficult piece of literature to digest, actually, even though it has short sentences, right? So go talk to the librarian, find something. You don't have to read the textbook. You don't have to read the Norwegian classics. You can read a translation from another language, like an English bestseller translated to English. Find anything you like so that you support your affective filter and build positive connections with Norwegian. Yeah. Let me have a look at the comments for a bit. I'll show this one. All right. It says, Scum is a good series to binge watch. It is, yeah. Norskish is a good one. Yeah, those are good recommendations. Both are on NRK. There are several good series on NRK TV to help with learning. One thing that helped me to get better with English is I would memorize the dialogue from movie scenes. Yeah. And recite it back when watching the same scene from the movie. Yeah, this is amazing. And you know what? This is kind of fun. Yeah, it's based on modeling and it provides you with a lot of spaced repetition. So this is very relevant for learning. It is, yeah. I do the same with Norsk, French, and German, and it seems to help. Yeah. This is very helpful. Thanks for the tips. And what I want to say about this as well is that memorization of phrases is very, very crucial as well. You don't want to memorize paragraphs and such, and like memorizing an exact dialogue and then shadowing it with the scene. That's something you do if you like to do it. That's not something that's necessary, yeah, because not everybody likes to memorize the dialogue as it went. But for everybody, it's super useful to actually memorize the phrases or short sentences. And this is another thing that like it would take a live stream on its own to get into the details on this. And I also do have a video lesson on this for my students or teach it in my courses because it's so important. But the biggest mistake in learning vocabulary, apart from, of course, learning it once and believing we will have it to the rest of our lives, which we discussed. So the other biggest mistake is that people pull isolated words out of the text, just the words I didn't know, strip them of grammar and be like, en erfaring, yeah, or something like that, yeah. But instead, we should take the phrases as they were. And this method that you're describing here of like actually learning the dialogue as it really went, that's very good because you are taking the phrases and the formulations, not converting everything back to the base forms and be like, I know the grammar so I can build it back up. No, you can't, because number one, it's impossible to operate like that in real time for most people. And it's impossible for everybody above a certain level. And number two, grammar is a construct. It's something we can describe and analyze and find if we have a look at a lot of language. But it doesn't mean that we take grammar and put words in it and we get natural speech. That's how computer languages work much more than natural languages. Yeah. So this is perfect. I like that. It's a great tip. Yeah. And on NRK TV, I would also recommend the teenage series Klassen, which is targeted at a younger audience than Norskish or Scum, and therefore it's simpler. Yeah, so the the dialogues are a bit simpler, and the plots, of course, are more simple, more understandable, so it is inherently more comprehensible. So I tend to use klassen with students from A2 level, or students studying for A2 level can use klassen already, when SCAM might be a bit too difficult at that point. Yeah, so klassen is a good one as well at NRK TV. And I also love the children's series Bluey, which is Australian though, but has very nice Norwegian dubbing. There are also a few seasons available on NRK TV, even though most of them are unavailable most of the time, but you will always find some episodes that are available, or it's on Disney Plus. Yeah, Disney Plus, Disney Plus. I was saying it in Norwegian. Yeah. So this is a great tip. I like it. Thank you. Yeah. Let me see. We have another one here. I suggest watching a few children's shows, especially the ones with silly or funny songs. Yeah, if you like it, this is a good tip. And we have, like, in the beginner course that I run, or I'm starting the English group from next Wednesday. We have a lot of suggestion from children's series, because that's what you in a way have to do at the very beginning. Because if it's a cartoon, especially, what's happening on the screen helps you with the comprehensibility. So they are calling everything the right name that you see on the screen, right? And that helps you a lot to kind of get going. Versus if you have something more adult or something more for teenagers, you do not see the things so explicitly. So children's shows are great, but also you must kind of like them. And it's very important to put yourself in that playful state of mind. But I tend to recommend Peppa Gris. That's the one that's really useful for starters, because it's so simple to understand it that you will pick up vocabulary even if you know nothing from before. So it's a super great starter. But I have some students who actually really hate that series, like maybe from already their childhood, or like they've seen so much of it with their kids, and like, no, they're getting resentful when they see it, or disgusted. And in that case, do not watch it. Yeah, same with silly songs. If you're able to put yourself in that playful state of mind and like enjoy it, and like Mikkel Ref, whatever, amazing. It's gonna help you so much. If you hate it and you cannot find it in yourself, then don't, even if everybody recommends it, because like we discussed, this will raise your affective filter. You will feel like, no, what am I doing? This is horrible. I hate every minute of this. This is uninteresting, right? And your ability to acquire from that will be very low, and essentially it's going to be a waste of time at best. And worse, it could become even like a put off, right? Something that damages your relationship with Norwegian. For many people, this is not a problem at all, and that's amazing. On the other hand, I do have some students who struggle with Norwegian, not in technical terms, as in like this is the grammar, this is the phrases, but in terms of finding their relationship to it. So that's also something I work a lot with students, as in like, this is normal. A lot of people have this, yeah. And let's find some ways in which you can do this, yeah. So if your relationship with Norwegian is kind of fragile, let's call it that, then anything that will worsen that relationship will raise the affective filter double or triple because of that, yeah. But otherwise, yeah, I think like being silly about stuff is amazing if you are able to put yourself in that state. Wine always helps too. Yes. This is fun. It does, but you know why? Wine and a good sense of humor. I'm reading the next comment. Yes, it does help. And a little bit of wine, or a little bit of alcohol, let's call it does help. I find myself understanding spoken Danish quite well when I'm tipsy. So it does help. But the reason it helps is that it kind of effectively takes you out of that listening exercise mindset that we do not have time to talk about too much today, because we have one more important step to take you through. But maybe in the next live stream, or if you're a beginner, do jump into our course, scan the QR code on the screen to have a look at the description of the course. We do have a lesson, of course, a coaching lesson on the listening exercise mindset. Because when you get a little tipsy, when you get drunk, it's not helpful anymore, right? We get a little tipsy, that's a sweet spot. A lot, for many people, not for everybody, but a lot of this kind of anxiety, or like performance anxiety, and being too conscious about yourself and what you're listening to and so on, and trying to quiz yourself on what you're listening to all the time instead of just easing into it, this is taken away a little bit. And if we can teach ourselves to acquire that state even without drinking that wine, right, it would be amazing, because we cannot always bring the glass of wine with us at all occasions. But sometimes maybe it does help to have half a glass of wine and then do the binging and be like, oh, actually, I see the difference. And what is it that I'm kind of doing, or what is it that I'm not giving a single F about right now that I normally do? And it seems to be very helpful. So you can also use it as a test. Yeah. Okay, nice. So let's go to the last area that I want to talk you through today. And that is your agency and your language learning mindset in general. And this is a huge area, of course, and a huge developmental potential for all of us, I guess. But agency and the belief that you can learn Norwegian, that you do have the ability to do this. So your self-efficacy, in other words, it is so strongly correlated with good results. And I think you know this. This is not only learning Norwegian. Learning Norwegian is not anything special in any way from learning other things. Or there are some specifics, of course, yeah, like between learning English, learning Norwegian, learning to ride your bike, and learning to use your copy machine at work. But at the end of the day, your sense of agency in the process is so important for your results. And I spoke about it a little bit at the beginning. Like, do not put your trust in one single textbook, one single teacher, one single course. You are getting a course, you are hiring the teacher to be a part of your master plan. You are the master of your master plan, aren't you? And it's very, very important to see and feel yourself as such, because then you will be able to take the good decisions for yourselves. You will be able to determine when something is not good for you any longer. And also, if we do not believe that we have agency, if we do not believe that we can do this, we will not take the steps to do it. We all know this, right? And it's very important with Norwegian, and I see it a lot. And very often, especially with my one-on-one students, but also in courses, a lot in courses actually, students come to me and they're like, you're gonna have difficult work with me, and they start like that, like telling me that they are not good. And I'm like, don't tell that to yourself, right? This is not a good self-talk, or not a good self-belief to be engaging in. We have different paces. Not all of us can become Norwegian poetry writers or TED speakers, but all of us can reach B1 muntly. I believe all of us can reach B2 muntly, if we really work at it and if we give ourselves the time. Like, we can reach a comfortable level, and we can reach the easygoingness and the let's call it the confidence, right, that we're all about. All of us can do this, yeah. But we have to work on our own terms and at our own schedules. And if we kind of blame ourselves all the time for everything, yeah, like I missed a lesson, all right, but you have kids and you have a difficult career, of course you missed a lesson, right? It's gonna take you more time because you have a lot on your plate, but it doesn't mean you are stupid, all right? So we need to take kind of the agency back and be the boss of our process. It's so important. So be the boss of your process. Think of your teacher as the expert you hired to help you. Like, if you run a company and you hire somebody to do your marketing, you still own the company, right? You are relying on an expert to help you with something, but the decision-making power is yours. right? So I like it a lot when my students complete the work that I assign, and I always do like blended courses. So we have meetings and I give out video lessons in addition, and I give out assignments and exercise platforms and things like that. Of course, if somebody was showing up for all the lessons, sending me questions in the meantime every other day, if they were handing in all the assignments the way I planned them out, it would work the best. Of course, it would. But we have the realities of our lives, and it is our own decision and our own responsibility, right, to be working with that rather than with just fulfilling the teacher's tasks. Yeah. So this is very, very important. And combining multiple sources, something I should say as well, is very, very efficient in terms of learning. So not relying on this one course, even though I'm very proud of my course setups, but using the course and doing your other things like the TV watching, like the Duolingo, like playing with AI and revising with it, doing all this on your own accord because you decided. And then the best language learning, it happens at the interfaces of the different things that you do, because and this draws back to the input and to the acquisition thing that we talked about at the beginning. If you revise the same thing from different angles that all are relevant and realistic, you will eventually remember it without working hard for it and sweating. And you will eventually also acquire it so that it will become just so normal for you. Like, this is what you say in Norwegian. Like, how could I not know it once, right? It just falls out of me when I don't even know where it came from. That's what we want. And that never happens when you have attended one course only, especially if it's the very traditional setup. Yeah, I proudly offer something more complex to my students, but even then, and I see it with myself, I work with a fantastic coach on various things in my language teaching business and whatnot, and I see the same thing. When she tells me something for the first time, I'm like, that's so true, and also I cannot implement on it. And when I hear it for the third or fifth time, I'm like, now it really clicks. Now I know what you mean exactly. I can go and implement this thing, for example. Or I have heard it many times over in different courses, or I listened to somebody's free content and I was like, interesting, interesting. And then she tells me something and I'm like, I know what you mean now. Now it makes so much sense, right? And the same with Norwegian. You've maybe attended a course in the past and you feel like, oh my God, I didn't even learn anything. But you did. You just cannot use it yet. If you attend maybe another course that is different, or if you buy some easy readers and start reading them and combine it with the children's series, and maybe get yourself a teacher who knows what they're doing so that you have access to support and questions, like answers to your questions from the teacher, and you do the combination and you are the boss of it and you believe that you can do it, you will get there. Yeah. So the interface of the different ways of doing it, that is where the treasure is and where the real learning and the real acquisition actually lies. Yeah. Each of the things that you do are important in themselves, but most important as a piece of your puzzle. Yeah. And you're putting the puzzle together. So your move, so that I'm not dragging you over time today, which I am always, you know me, but the move that comes from this third area is, what are you going to add to your Norwegian learning process? Or what are you going to remove from your Norwegian learning process today? What can you do today based on your agency and your mindset shifts? And I realize that mindset shifts do not happen overnight, but let this sit in you and let it grow. All right, think about it, get back to it. What can you do? How can you exercise your agency? Maybe you are very happy with your process and you don't have to do anything. Maybe you are realizing now that, okay, I've been doing a number of things that I'm actually quite resentful about. Remove them. Do it today. And I'm not saying like if everything you're doing about your Norwegian you resent, just remove everything and do nothing. No, no, no. You have to put something other back in so that you are getting the exposure that you need. But if somebody told you like you have to read Klartale, Klartale is a great resource, but maybe you don't like it. If you don't like it, out. Don't do it. If you didn't know about Klartale, it's like an easy reader of the daily news, yeah, for Norwegian learners. If you didn't know about it and you're like, oh, that sounds interesting, put it in, right? And Klartale, by the way, every day they have like 1 or 2 articles that you can also play. But that's another good tip as well. Anything you have in writing, you can play right nowadays. So that's a great thing as well. Like listen to everything. Don't just read. Listen, listen, listen. You can copy paste just about anything into Google Translate for all I know, or into Word, or into any AI assistant of your choice, and just have it read out loud for yourself. Yeah, you can do that. So do all of these things. And today, already today, not tomorrow, not sometimes, already today, be like, what can I take and put in? Or what can I take and remove so that I make the learning process more mine, more feeling like more sensible, more relevant, so that I can learn like the boss that I am, because that is very strongly correlated with how well you will do. And also, if you can manage to be there for the long run, because learning a language, even though very often I see these commercials for like, become fluent in 1 month. You cannot, right? You don't become fluent in 1 month. We know this. The best language learners ever we know about are small kids, right? And they take like at least 3 years before they manage to start making any kind of sense. And before they could take something like B2, even like muntly, they take like 10 years, right? So it's not like it happens like that. Children do not learn quickly. They do not. They learn efficiently, but not very quickly in what we consider quick as adults, right? So it doesn't happen in 1 month. If anybody's telling you that, then just like send them where they belong with that piece of advice. But you can get there if you do it in your own way and in your own pace. Yeah, everybody can get there. Okay, let me just check this comment. Another tip is songs. There's nursery rhymes and English songs that have been translated into a different language. Christmas carols. Yeah. Yeah, this is also fun. I like songs, especially children's songs, if you have a look at the lyrics and you can pick. For example, today I was talking to a group of students about the song Mikkel Rev satt og skrev. We were talking about foxes for some reason in the lesson, so that was the bridge how we came to that. But satt og skrev, right, those are past tenses that are typically very difficult to remember for people, and like satt versus satte and sittet and that kind of thing. So if you remember the song about Mikkel Rev, which is very hard to unremember once you've remembered it, right, you can pull out vocabulary and even grammar out of songs. With Christmas carols can be more difficult because that's typically archaic language, yeah. But if you like it, then whatever floats your boat as well, right? If you have an emotional connection to anything, that's very, very good for language learning, yeah. Let me see here. The most important thing is to be prepared to get out of our comfort zone and to not feel embarrassed while trying practicing. Yes, yeah, this is very important. That's what I was speaking about with avoiding negative effect versus stepping out of your comfort zone. It is important to step out of our comfort zone, just like you're mentioning, because basically most learning happens out of our comfort zones, doesn't it? Especially practical learning, as in like building of skills, social skills, which speaking in actual interactions, that's a lot of social skills as well as language skills. It's more social than language very often. So we do need to do that. Yeah, it's very important to remind ourselves of that. And also, it's very important to always be judging, like, is this the necessary stepping out of the comfort zone in the conversation, or even in the lessons, or in consuming the input? Because as I was saying, with the input and with the acquisition, it's an inside job. And for us to not just sit through a lesson, but to really like take it in and really practice and really focus and really repeat it to ourselves, that also is out of our comfort zone. That's why people don't do that, right? It's so easy to sit back and be like, teacher, teach me. But the learning happens on the inside, and it's always out of your comfort zone, because you have to kind of stretch yourself much more than just listen. But do not put yourself into negative emotions if it's not necessary. Yeah, the thing you're describing, Jesus, is super necessary. I agree completely. If it's unnecessary, or like if it's something social, or something like the content is completely irrelevant for you and so on, remove yourself out of that situation and be the boss. Yeah, so there is a difference between the necessary stepping out of our comfort zone internally in the learning process, always, all the time, and in social interactions, and sitting unnecessarily like a victim in a bad situation or with the wrong sources. Yeah, so beware of that. Yeah, let me see. This one, Norwegian is not hard because of a lot of words are very descriptive, especially for animal names, like bat is a flying mouse, and yeah, flaggermus. Yeah, flagger. It's a flaggermus. It's not exactly flying, but you are right. There are a lot of descriptive words. I don't think necessarily it's so easy, because it kind of makes sense, but you have to know how they're put together as well. So you cannot just make stuff up because you're gonna make up something different. So I think you have to reach a level at around B2 when you get an intuition for actually kind of creating the words yourself, so that they are in accordance with how the language works. But it's funny, it's easier to understand how these words came up. And also, if you know the component words, it can be more easy to remember them, because of what we talked about with the spaced repetition. You've already got a lot of repetition on the components, and then you put them together, which makes sense to you, so it can be easier to learn it. It can be, yeah. Place names are also funny. Everything is called like a was or Kol or something like that, yeah, or Lia, and all these are actual like nouns for topography. So we just call something like a hilly hill or whatever. Yeah, but this is true. On the other hand, it might be equally difficult to like judge if like, have I made this up, or is it an actual word? Yeah, so it's helpful and not helpful at the same time. Yeah. All right, thank you. Thank you guys for participating so well. I'm going to repeat the three main areas so that we have a good summary of this. First one, be aware or know about the difference between just learning and acquisition of something. Always try to have acquisition of the language as your focus, because that will help you to speak confidently and easily. When we have just learned something, there is no way it will come out of us without thinking. Yeah. And the move to take with this is to create favorable conditions for acquisition to be able to occur with you. And you can do that by exposing yourself to input and by practicing spaced repetition. That's the main tips that I have. I have many more that we do not have time for, that I teach in my courses, but these are the big ones that if you do, you will see a big difference. The second area we discussed was comprehensible input, which means input like listening and reading of authentic Norwegian, preferably, that you understand, but also not fully, so that you can learn something new from it, and not putting yourself in a negative state of affect, so as not to raise your affective filter, because that would block your kind of competence or your capacity, let's call it, for learning. By the way, with the comfort zone and stepping out of your comfort zone, when you are stepping out of your comfort zone socially, as in speaking to somebody, in real life when you are stressed out and dysregulated by it at the beginning, which you must be. It's a phase you must get through, right, to learn it, as was pointed out here. You are not learning very much language-wise in these situations, are you? Right? Those are performance moments, and you are learning a lot in terms of building the skill of doing it scared and like getting through and kind of regulating yourself in that situation and eventually being able to do it normally. But when you are so stressed by it and really stepping out of your comfort zone, you are performing what you already have at that point. That's something I didn't mention, but it's a useful distinction, I think. You are not learning so much language-wise. You are learning something else in that situation. Yeah. So that's why, for example, if your teacher puts you on the spot in class, somebody has high tolerance for this and they're fine. Many people are not fine and should tell their teacher that they shouldn't do this to them because this is actually ruining their ability to be learning in class, right? So there's a difference there. And the tip or the move to do here was to work on regulating your nervous system, calming yourself down in these situations, and finding the way to learn Norwegian that does not stress you out. Apart from, of course, stepping out of your comfort zone with the speaking to other people, which is building social skills. But for building of the language ability itself on your own, do not stress yourself unnecessarily, all right? And the third area that we discussed lastly, agency is the queen of all the skills and attitudes that you need for language learning. High agency correlates with good results, and you should be the boss. Yeah. And the move here, today, not tomorrow, do something, add something, or remove something from your process, or revise your process. Do I really have a process? Do I have a plan for my Norwegian? Do I have my own goal, or do I just have like Norway's goal, right? And have a look at it, do something with it today, like the boss that you are. Okay, that is it for today. If you're a beginner, have a look at the QR code and join us for the A1 course. And have a good one. Have a good weekend when it comes. Yeah, it's soon now for most of us, I hope. God helg. Ha det.